Hello and welcome back to the Pensive podcast. I'm Chloe and I'm the host of this podcast. I'm an artist, a creative, founder of Pensive, and I'm here to help you feel more organized, creative, productive, mindful, all of the above. This will be the fourth or fifth episode of season 3 of this podcast, and I've done a really great job of promoting things so far. Yeah, I actually completely forgot to mention in all the previous episodes the kind of format of what I'm putting out. So here's my promotional segment, first of all. Each podcast episode has an accompanying Substack piece. So, like, it's a think piece that complements what I'm talking about here. Or actually, I feel like the podcast complements what I'm writing about because I'm better on paper. So if you want more thoughts, more thought out thoughts about what these podcast episodes are about, definitely check out the Substack pieces that I write. And that will be linked in the description somewhere. So these Substack pieces aren't just long form think pieces. I mean, they are. There's a lot of writing. I'm quite surprised at how much I can write. I've been told in the past I'm pithy, which just means you don't write much, but you get to the point quickly, which is, usually a good thing. But I actually managed to expand on my thoughts in these Substack pieces. So I'm quite proud of myself. You have the long form think piece, as well as voice memos, recordings, just sounds. And I collect like conversations with my friends, things I record for myself, and sounds around me that I think are interesting. And I collate them and I pick the ones that I think will add some texture to the piece, give it a certain sound, and they kind of permeate throughout the piece. As well as that, I collage. So I sit down and think, what would this look like? And I put together things to give it more of a cool visual essence. And then I round it off with a piece of music that I think would do nicely to accompany the writing. So yeah, you have all kinds of things. You have podcast, the article itself, sounds, images, and music, all just all in one thing. And that is being released fortnightly alongside these podcast episodes. And if there's any extra things that you need to know, like promotion, I stick a little poster in there about what Pensive's doing as well. So running workshops, for example, I'm always doing a workshop. So if you're in London, come along to one of those. That's my promotion. It's done now. I actually managed to promote something successfully and clearly and succinctly-ish. Okay, so let's get on with today's episode, which is about traveling. This was inspired by my recent trip to Sydney, Australia. I have one of my best friends who lives in Sydney. She lives literally one of the furthest points possible from where I am. So we see each other very rarely, which is unfortunate, just because of geographical, things prohibiting us from actually being physically in the same place. But I got to see her, and it was my third time, I think, in Sydney. And I've gone at different points in my life. First time I went, I was 16. The second time I went was 1 week before COVID lockdown. And then I went very recently. It's a different experience now going compared to before, I think. Where we both are in our lives and in different places, and seeing what she's doing in her daily life. Because it wasn't a trip that's particularly touristy, because I kind of have done all of that stuff, and we're both just very comfortable with each other. So there's no need to plan activities and keep me entertained and having to go out every day. So it was more me exploring Sydney and us doing our own things our own paces and like coming together, because she was also working as well. So we would just do our things together and separately. And then, yeah, it was very relaxed. One day, I don't know, I was just wandering around Sydney on my own, just exploring different parts. And as I usually do when I'm traveling, I thought, what would it be like to live here? And, you run through all the different scenarios in your head of, okay, well, my friend lives like this, and I see other people living like this, and this is accessible and feels very safe and very calm. And it's November and it's summer, so that would be weird having a summery Christmas, because it was very strange. It was very strange to see tinsel, and it's like 30 degrees Celsius, and there's a giant Christmas tree in the middle of Sydney. I felt wrong, honestly. It felt so wrong. Apparently people like wear Santa bikinis around this. That's just upside down world as far as I'm concerned. But you run through all these fantastical ideas of what your life would be like if you relocated. And that's something I tend to do wherever I go. I'm like, what would it be like to live here? Who would I be? What would I do? And this thought kind of spurred a little spontaneous lyric essay, poet. I don't know what it is. You can read it on the Substack piece. It kind of spurned this thought that when I travel and I think about not just the idea of me living there, it also is accompanied by like the thought of who I could be when I'm there. I feel like we step into different versions of ourselves when we travel. The version of myself here in London is not the version of myself that I take to Sydney. And it's not to say like I become a completely different person. I just feel like there's something about different cities or different countries, or even just traveling, 10 minutes down the road, it can bring out different aspects of yourself. This isn't something that I truly understand psychologically. Like, what is it that changes within you when you travel? I genuinely don't have even a concept of what that could be. I mean, I know linguistically, because I speak a few languages, and I know when I speak French, that's a different Chloe. Like that's not English Chloe, and Japanese Chloe is definitely not English Chloe. I know there's a lot of cultural nuance embedded into language. We always talk about untranslatable words and things that have concepts in certain languages that don't in your native language. And, there's things that you can explain only within a certain language. And obviously these things are like culture is embedded within language. So of course, when you travel, you're experiencing the physical change in environment, and you're also experiencing the change in language. So even down to when you are going into a shop in Sydney and they say, how's it going? And I'm like, I recognize that as English, but we wouldn't use that phrase in the UK. Or maybe I'm wrong, and I've because sometimes I feel like my brain is still mush from living in Japan so long. I forget what is British English or English. Just, I don't know, some phrases that are so normal in like Aussie English are not the same as British English, obviously. But it's kind of just these small things that you experience and you pick up on that kind of, I don't know, change the vibe a bit, change how you're experiencing the different city. Thinking about my time in Japan as well, I lived in Tokyo, and it's a city that's just so very different from what I knew, because I lived in London my whole life, and then I moved to Tokyo when I was early 20s till late 20s. You're already a mess when you are in your early 20s and you think you know everything. And then you move countries. What a mess. But I think further to the idea of thinking about who are we when we travel and what parts of us do we bring when we travel, and that's only a very short amount of time, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month or something. That is kind of exacerbated when we move and we live abroad for extended periods. And if you live there for the rest of your life, are you the same person that you brought when you first moved? Or like how do you change, and what part of the travel changes you, or is it something already within you that is just brought out? Yeah, I just remember when I first moved, and obviously this, like, I was in my early 20s, still brain forming, still forming my adult self, so these are all things that have to be taken into consideration. I think that the version of me in Japan, there's a large part of it was formed there and remains there, I think, because there are certain aspects of myself and my personality that singularly work in a Japanese environment, I think, or that I had to become in order to live in a Japanese environment. And now that I'm back in London, they're not necessary. So I just, I left that part of me behind. And this isn't like, I don't know who I am or my identity formation. It's just, I think there's ebbs and flows and necessary actions and assimilation that you just take on. And it's just interesting to think about who I was for an extended period of time, for 5 years. I would be very interested to talk to my friends who I met in Japan and how they would experience me as a person in London. So I feel like it's very different. I feel like they'd be confused. I think the version of me that moved to Tokyo was very driven. She wanted a lot. She wanted to achieve her goals, and she had very fixed ideas of what she wanted. And I think that Tokyo is the kind of place that supports you in that early adulthood, in that ambition, and in that drive to achieve. And it's a very good place to start. And I'm glad that I did that there. It's also a place that is safe for you to fail. I feel like unless you really, really, really just make it your mission to mess up, it's hard to mess up. A lot of life there is very structured, and which is like, if you're like me, you're like, I hate structure. It gets kind of annoying. Like, don't tell me what to do. But a lot of it is being told what to do, which is good for a young person. You need structure before you break the rules and become chaotic. Within that structure, I'm talking about like the bureaucratic nature of Japan, and there's a lot of form filling, which has come in handy. So whenever I'm handed things to fill out, I'm not scared by paperwork anymore. Nothing can scare me anymore. So I had to do it in Japanese. Some places I've give up and be like, do you have this form in English? And sometimes they did, but no, most of the time you had to talk to someone in Japanese with a Japanese form. There was a lot of characters. There was a lot of figuring out. Imagine doing your taxes and just anyway, that's for another time. Another part that was interesting to me is the exploration of my identity that I was able to have because the city was safe. In my visual presentation, I really like push the boundaries. And I think that's why you get a lot of crazy and interesting outfits. If you like look at Japanese street fashion, it's not somewhere where someone's gonna shout at you on the street about what you're wearing. Not like in London, they'd be like, what's going on? You know, it's completely different. And so I was able to explore what I wanted to look like in the most extreme way possible. Before now, I've dialed it back and decided to become more comfortable. But because I had that experience of going to the absolute pinnacle of pastel colors, I thought, yeah, I really like this. This is what I want to look like. So there was a lot of self-exploration. And of course, it's embroiled all within being in your 20s and being confused and whatever. But I do think that city brought out that side of me in that way that I don't think I would have had so much of in London. I was still kind of pushing the boundaries of my look in London, but it didn't feel the same. It didn't feel the same just with the environment of London, the energy and the people, and the influence around me. Like the stylistic influence is different compared to the Japanese stylistic influence. Like down to the nitty gritty, like I learned specifically how to layer, like it's like a fine art of layering just from observing people. Like I'm not just talking about subculture fashion, like mainstream fashion. I don't know what it is about the layering specifically that's very very Japanese, I suppose. The other thing that I was thinking about was that I've never done one, but I know that there are artist residencies that are abroad. This is like something I would love to do, just any artist residency. I'm at the very beginning of my artist career journey, whatever I'm doing, but something that I would like to do is possibly do an artist residency, especially abroad. And I remember seeing in Tokyo, there's like various opportunities for that. But I kind of weirdly already did one because I did my master's in Tokyo. And so I was thinking about the impact that had on me as a creative and my creativity, because we are obviously very influenced by who we learn from and like I said before, the environment and the people around us. So wondering if I had the formative years of my like creative journey, like the beginning of it was mostly in Japan or from like a Japanese influence. So I wonder now, I can't go back and undo it, and I don't wish to, but I always wonder what my creativity and my perspectives would look like had I not done my Japanese degree and then my master's degree in Japan. Obviously, like I like Japanese culture and history and fashion and things, so it would make sense to do that. I think what I'm trying to say is when I did my master's in Japan, if I make it sort of akin to like an artist retreat or residency, but like a pretty hardcore one, I guess, because I was surrounded by the Japanese perspective of art and their institutions and art galleries and things like that. I think I've developed an eye for things within that lens. Even in my approach to my own creativity, I still think that even though I feel like I'm a Londoner at heart and I'm very rebellious and don't try and put me in a box, but at the same time, I think my approach to things in organization, my love of craft, all these kind of things, because I was put in that environment, these kind of things weren't told to me explicitly, like you must love this and you must try this. I think through osmosis, I have absorbed these things and now they operate at the level of like my subconscious. So when I do delve there for my creativity and my creative practice, that is what is coming up. That I find that very interesting. And then I put myself in positions where, I'm abroad, I'm in Sydney, I'm traveling, I go other places, I'm in Paris, and I'm just thinking like, what would my creativity look like if I stayed here for 6 months? Okay, for example, I recently went to Paris. It sounds like I travel a lot. I don't. I just recently I was like, let me get out of England. It's raining. So I went with someone who had never been to Paris. So we did all the tourist things. We went to the Louvre and we did Eiffel Tower and walked along the Seine and all of this. And because it was my 50 billionth time in Paris, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But actually, it was very nice to do those tourist things because I think when you've been somewhere so many times, you just become very cynical. It's very easy to be like, those are boring tourist things. But I really felt very appreciative of it. I feel like I'm seeing things through different eyes. I'm a lot less cynical about everything. And I kind of started to understand that cliche of the city of romance. Something felt very romantic about it, and not in the coupley romantic kissy sense, just the feeling of romanticizing your life and feeling very in the flow of life. And I felt the romance like emanating from the city. And again, I delved into my fantasy of, oh, what would it be like if I lived here? And then where it inevitably goes is, what would it look like if I created here? What would my art look like if I spent 3 months in Paris? I think the kind of things that I would produce would be a lot softer and a lot easier, and it would all come from a different place. And I can't pinpoint what I mean when I say it'll come from a different place, because that is deeply psychological. I'm not talking about this even scientifically. I don't know what part of me would, like, what part of my personality would come out if I tapped into my pituitary gland. Like, I don't know. I don't have answers for you. But I know that as a creative person, we're always looking to be refreshed and inspired from the outside and see how that resonates from within us. And then we can create the work that needs to be created. And definitely in Paris, there is a mood that is so lovely and romantic that I would love to see how I would change as myself, like looking within myself, and how that would reflect in my work. Whether my writing would change to be more philosophical and flowery. Because I used to really dislike going to Paris. I don't know why. I was young and I didn't appreciate the fact that you could just walk around and look at all the stunning buildings and the like opera building and all the beautiful architecture, and the pace of life was far too slow for someone who needed things to do. And there's a lot of stuff to do in Paris, actually. So I don't know. I think I was just mad at the world. Like, when you're a teenager and just mad at everything. So again, what kind of person would I be? What kind of art could I produce if I'm just totally at peace with myself and the world? Which is a great thing, by the way. We don't have to be angry in order to produce great art. I don't think we should always have to put ourselves in positions of extremity or ill feeling in order to produce something great. I know that there's a lot of artists over time who felt bad, to put it lightly, like did not feel great, suffered from mental illness and produced great work. But for your sanity, for your day-to-day living, you should not have to put yourself in those positions to make great works of art. That's my opinion. And aside from the art in general, why do we move and why do we relocate? I remember I had a dream that I was going to run my magazine, which I did. I did my fashion magazine for 5 years. But on a personal level, there was something that I wanted for myself, that I was seeking. And I thought that putting myself, particularly in Japan, I could find that part of myself, but also escape the other parts that I didn't want. But I've learned you can't outrun the problems. Trust me. They come with you wherever you are. So don't even try. But I think in putting yourself in a different place, you have the opportunity to isolate those problems and discover what it is that you're actually, because sometimes you don't actually know what it is that is there, that is not serving you in your life and is going against who you could be and what you could do. So in a positive way, putting yourself in a different place, living abroad, you can clearly identify the parts that came with you that you don't want. You can isolate them. You can look them in the eye and say, I don't want this anymore. And you can sort it out. And the best thing to do is to actually try and fix it or sort it out or manage it so that if you do continue to live abroad, or you decide to move elsewhere, or you decide to move back home, you actually take the parts of you that you like, or you understand the parts of you that you want, and to better nurture them and to better help the parts of you that need care. In one of the previous Substack pieces, I wrote very, very briefly about travel, and the point is to kind of expand your horizons. And in my opinion, the best trips that I've had, the best travel experiences are always the ones where you're welcomed into someone else's home and essentially into their life. So it's not so much about being an observer of a culture at a distance. It's more about being a part of that and being invited into what it would be like to be a citizen of that place. In that piece, it was more to understand that if you think your life is so boring and mundane, what's the point of people traveling and trying to get a glimpse of that everyday life? You're surrounded by all these things that you see every day, and you see a tourist taking a picture of it, and you think, why are you taking a picture of that? That's very boring. But that's what traveling is. For them, that boring is like, it's beautiful, it's stunning, it's very interesting. But taking that idea and putting it into the context of just traveling, and putting it into the context of figuring out who you are and who you're becoming through this act of putting yourself in a different place. I think taking advantage of that, and if you have friends abroad, or if you can find a way to completely immerse yourself in the day-to-day of other people trying to eat the food and trying to walk the back streets or something like that, I think you will start to understand them better and their way of life, and what that way of life brings to them, what that means for them every day. Because there's so many times when you travel and you say, oh, they're so relaxed, or they have such a great community spirit, or there's like specific observations that you can make about the people of that culture. But you have to understand, what is it, and what things are in place, and their attention to their everyday, and why do they act the way do they act, and can you take on some of those principles and that mindset for yourself in order to either better your situation or more firmly understand your values and your sense of self. My last thought is, if you can travel, it doesn't have to be abroad. You don't have to go to far-flung places. You literally do not have to go to the other side of the world. You can move locally. You can literally just go an hour away from your house. That's great as well. I do that quite regularly. I just I get on a train and I just go somewhere else. And you let your mind wander, and you let yourself think. And if you start feeling happy, maybe delve into that feeling and think, why do I feel so happy here? What is it that's made my heart go pitter patter? Thank you for listening to this episode. Hope it was interesting, and I hope you feel inspired to travel somewhere. Please read the accompanying Substack piece. And if you're interested in workshops, have a look at that as well. I think there will be some posted on there. Again, thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next episode.